Welcome everyone, this is Axomm from Fire Emblem, and today I'm with a very special guest, Raisins. Raisins, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, a pleasure to be on the show, Axomm. I am Raisins. I go by Originalraisins on Twitch as well. I think my Twitch will be down in the description. But yes, I do stream Fire Emblem. I enjoy all the Fire Emblem games. I think all of them are excellent. I have a very particular fondness for 6 and 10 and 3 houses. I enjoy doing challenge runs on my channel. Very pleased to be here joining Axomm. Remind us again, what is the topic of this discussion?
So the topic today is actually going to be what are the most underrated units in a specific game. Today's game is going to be actually Fire Emblem 6, The Binding Blade.
These are units which have generally been overlooked, considered to be not very good. And I think in this video, we're going to each present a unit whom we think is actually better than the common consensus believes. You know, try to argue to each other which unit is indeed the more underrated or which one is actually the more valuable.
The system by which we're going to go by is something akin to like a trial. What we're doing here is a pitch, rebuttal, and we try to not convince each other, but convince you, the viewer, of which one is the most underrated.
And for what it's worth, the rebuttal in each case will be not necessarily arguing whether or not they are over or underrated, but in particular, whether the other person is actually overrating the unit.
I'm going to start off by introducing my pick. It's going to be Cecilia for me. So
Cecilia,
yes.
The Valkyrie who joins in chapter 14. Okay.
Correct. One. The Mage General. I mean, she's no pent, you know, but we try here. So my argument about Cecilia is that when you take her in a vacuum, she has horrendous bases. She comes on a map right before the desert map, so she has a lot of things going against her. But you have to take into consideration her fantastic base anima rank. She has A rank with anima. She's very, very close from reaching 4 blaze level usage right after, right? So we're talking about a unit that comes already being able to use air caliber at base, has the movement of a horse, which we all know movement is very, very strong in Fire Emblem, particularly in 6, which has a very, very large map. And she also has stave rank that's pretty good. It's C. So we're not very far off from being able to use rescue or warp staves, which are some of the most powerful there. She can also use restore at base on a game that's absolutely littered with a bunch of status effect staves, especially on the guidance chapters that make it even more difficult to handle, such as Berserk and so on and so forth. My biggest argument about Cecilia is that people immediately shut her down due to her low base stats, and I'll give you that. 10 base speed, not the most fantastic thing. But let's take into consideration the fact that she doesn't use a guiding ring in order to promote, so that's extra money, or even promoting another mage that you would like. Having that horse motility in a game that's littered with flyer effective units, so like bulky Wyvern Lords at the end. But if you have air caliber or even 4 blaze on a unit that has higher range, you can now play or phase a couple of more threats that would otherwise put you in a more defensive position. So she's a very strong unit, being able to control more space as well. Her investment is almost nil for what she can contribute in. Having magic, which is always something that attacks the lower of the defensive stats on average, and I'm pretty confident that she can probably double some lower speed enemies later on, like some bandits and whatnot. And the chapters that come immediately after, there's a guy in the middle with bolting, so she has good enough resistance that she could bait some shots there if you needed to. She can also pull people down that corridor or move herself, the restore staff there too. There's just a lot going for her that people don't really recognize and just throw away because it's like, oh, horse on a desert chapter, like we're not doing that. People just really like to gang up on her because she's not Pent. Like that's what I really feel it is.
For real.
Yeah, she can't even move. Pent was over here soloing entire armies. I had to kill people faster so that he didn't steal the guidance chapter.
It's funny you bring up this desert thing because yeah, like her move is just so trash in the desert, and I've heard it like very commonly said if she joined a chapter later, she'd be strictly worse, but people would like her more, right? Because they didn't have to endure that awful one chapter in the desert. Wait, I'm arguing for your case. Hold on a minute. I should be making you do the work. Carry on.
Like, look at her competition in terms of just class itself, right? We're also talking about mages in general. You have Lilina up in that point, and Clarine. Should be way higher, especially with people that value a lot of movement. And that seems to be the consensus amongst the community that movement is one of the best stats. So. And stave usage too. Like, come on, let's not underplay here.
I do like you brought up the guiding ring, how you don't really need it you don't need it to activate Cecilia, right? She's already in Valkyrie. Let's not forget also Saul and Ellen, in particular Saul, who just has such high staff rank that he can activate his work very quickly. Yeah, you're right. What other mage is actually getting to that point and competing with her directly? So just to kind of consolidate the ideas that you put out there, It is her starting anima rank, her base movement, her starting staff rank, and the fact that she does not require a guiding ring for promotion. And I think you pointed out a couple other places where her stats, unimpressive though they may be, are adequate. For example, surviving the siege tomes on the infernal element. The fact that she can use air caliber straight away also. Frankly, there are a lot of reasons to dislike Cecilia, right? She joins in the desert, having to move. There's even this odd effect where because she's not in prep, she gets deployed to the map later. She's at the bottom of the deployment order, which makes her like the top priority for that sleep staff, right? So it's like, what's the point of having the restore staff on Cecilia because she's the one getting slept? Frankly, all of these problems I bring up are like very trivial, but I'm just pointing out like reasons that people very frequently hate on her. I guess now, therefore, it's time for my rebuttal.
I'm ready. I'm going to activate Pavise here real quick, but go on.
The first one I want to bring up is anima rank. Obviously, with anima rank, higher is better, but I don't necessarily think the proximity to Forblaze is anything worth lauding. She is still an entire 50 weapon rank away from Forblaze, which is either 50 attacks or 25 lethal attacks. Maybe you can find 25 wyverns to finish off, but she doesn't even one-shot them with air caliber. The fact that she can even wield air caliber at all, I think is very impressive. The fact that you kind of played up the proximity to Forblaze, I think you are slightly overrating that aspect. She is oftentimes the only person on my team who ends up being able to wield Forblaze, but even when she gets there, not really all that impressive, right? Like she attacks a Manakee and does half their health, but when everyone else grabs Durandal or Maltat or Armads, they go up in one round of Manakee. So like, even how good is this end result? When I do train up Blue, when I do train up even like Hugh, they oftentimes end up with better results from the Forblaze. They just have better speed, they just have better magic. Specifically playing out A rank anima, I think is a bit overrating that aspect. I find that Cecilia kind of uses up 10 or 15 of her air caliber uses that she starts with over the course of her entire lifetime, and then that's basically the extent of her combat. It's like, how many crap attacks did you do with this air caliber in order to earn the right to use Forblaze, right? At that point, that's the question I'm trying to ask.
You are right that when the users of Forblaze that are the growth units, like Lou, or even Lilina actually one-shots with Forblaze towards the end of the game because of her bonkers magic stat and the multiplicative. What I was really thinking about more when I'm talking about the Forblaze usage is that you have that effective on regular Wyvern Lords too, and those Wyvern Lords will get outright chunked a lot, and we know how bulky they get.
Against those wyverns, plus her 11 base magic is 53 attack. I think on hard mode, that's enough to hit wyvern riders. At the end of the day, I just look at the end result and I look at the stuff you do in order to get there, and I'm wondering, like, again, like how many awful attacks did you launch with Cecilia before you could unlock Forblaze to deliver this like really mid attack? Or the next thing I want to address, you brought up, I think it was the staff rank and horse movement. I'm going to say I actually completely agree with the horse movement. I think it's inconvenient in her join map, and that's about it. Come on, like it's one map, okay? It's one map. just
it's a really
deal
bad
with it.
map. Yeah.
Just deal with it, okay? Just like
again, fine. Yes, it sucks, but whatever.
Okay, so the staff rank is enough to use restore, mend, recover, heal, torch, and hammer, and I guess barrier. So like that's a lot of good stuff, but that's really about it. It can't use physic, can't use warp, can't even use rescue. Can't use any of the offensive stabs, and even if she could use the offensive stabs, her magic is so crap that I wouldn't really even want to try it. Give the Berserk or the Silence or whatever to Nime and have her be the one to use that. You overlapped those two concepts when I actually think they just don't really touch at all. I think Cecilia does not very frequently get to rescue rank, definitely doesn't get to warp rank. I do think she's at the very least better than her class competition of these things. She's better than Clarine, because as you mentioned, Clarine's magic growth is just so trash. I think people, in a way, overhate on her base stat, on Cecilia's base stats, but they are probably better than what Clarine is going to have at that point. But as far as the staff utility you brought up, it's like healing stabs and restore.
But the only reason I think I give her more credit than that is because until you get Nimi or Yodel or somebody that's really, really good, like the powerhouse staff users, I do agree with you that her magic stat's not really going to be warping everybody out of the place. The rescue value is much more because she can cover more range due to her horse movement with rescue. Not that bad. And I mean, if we're going to go by staff rank, the same thing you're doing to Saul, you could just heal with Cecilia. So it's like who you're choosing to heal with. You could argue that Saul is a better choice, It's true, but you could also heal with Cecilia or barrier up at each turn. So I don't know if the grinding weapon rank is going to be that much more difficult.
Yeah, it's the question of like, can you really scramble out that 50 staff rank before one of these better staff users whom you cited joins, right? And for one, you already have a better staff user in the form of Saul. He doesn't have the movement, so yes, he's like maybe worse at his rescue staff in a way, but honestly, I think it's not really that far out of reality to say Saul is going to have enough magic. He has pretty good magic and magic growth. Make no mistake, even though I'm rebuking your case and saying that I think you're overrating her staff utility by giving her credit for stuff above C, she does deserve credit for stuff at C and below. And all of those things are good. Again, I always say the restore staff is like criminally underrated.
He said it!
And criminally underused. I think
I agree.
The
100%.
number of people who complain about status conditions is like, you should just buy restores. She does get credit for all that. It's just the stuff above you started going on about, and I'm like, I don't know. That's my rebuttal to that particular aspect. And then lastly, the base stats. I think the base stats are adequate, right?
They're pretty bad, man. It's okay. Like I'll take that L there. They're pretty bad. 10 speed is not good, no matter how you look at it.
Her stats are good enough to like deliver a chip. Maybe that chip is enough to highly damage or finish off a wyvern, but it's never going to be her alone. And you have a lot of other solutions at that point for wyverns. You still have Klein, you still have iGreen.
I'll agree that the combat is not her forte. Like that's I'm not even going to try to sit here and justify. She has amazing combat. It's more she has good effective damage.
For sure. And I guess like I just wanted to like check you on just this one point, because it's like for a moment there it sounded as though you were really praising her base stats, but you gave her credit for like surviving bolting, and that was basically it. The fact that she's on a horse makes her extremely attractive, right? Like usually when I deploy my units, I'm like deploy the people with staff rank first and then deploy the mounts. And she passes both criteria. So I think you're right. She's underrated. I think a lot of people overhate her by just focusing on one thing that's very easy to ignore or deal with, like focusing on her poor desert movement, which is the most temporary problem in existence, or focusing on her bad base stats. Like I said, they're adequate. They're not awful, but they're adequate. And like I think there are a lot of reasons that people unjustly hate her, and I think there are a lot of things she's good at. But that was my rebuttal, is that I think, in particular, the A rank anima and the C rank stabs are. You kind of overplayed them as though they were excellent things, and I think they're just kind of like passable qualities about her, if anything.
I mean, not everybody can be Pent, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
It's tough. It's tough to reach that. What does he have? A or B ranks?
He has double A. He has double A's.
Man, if only he had trained Cecilia for a little bit longer. Gosh. Just a little bit longer.
Just a bit. I think the most underrated unit in FE6 is, or the one I thought of at least, yours is pretty good, I gotta say. Cecilia's a pretty good contender for underrated. But my choice for the underrated unit of FE6 is Sue. I think people are a little bit too afraid of Sakai. And I think when people see Sue, what Sue represents to them is going to the Sakai route, when for one, that's not necessarily true. You can still employ Sue for a wide variety of tasks and still go Ilya if that's your desire. I don't think it's the harder route between the two. Or if it is the harder route, it's only by a little. I think that you really just shouldn't be afraid of going to that route. I think all too often I will suggest, like using Sue or deploying Sue, and people say like, oh, but you'll just go Sakai. And here's the thing, people, they won't even say you'll go Sakai, and that's a bad thing. They'll say, oh, but you'll go Sakai, and just leave it at that, as though it speaks for itself. So
that is so true. Can I throw a quick something in here? So I was doing an Ironman of FE6, and Zealot went rogue and died. So in order to get the perfect ending, I had no choice but to go Sakai. I knew what I was going to see. It was like getting a shot at the doctor. Like, you're afraid of the needle going in. And when you get there, you're like, okay, this sucks, but it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's like, whatever. I wish I didn't have to do this, but here I am. But I do agree there's an existential dread around Sakai.
Earlier, I mentioned there are two things that can pretty much give you an instant deployment in my army, and that is having a staff rank or having a horse. And at the point when Sue joins, there are several chapters when she has a horse and other people don't, and so she earns the deployment slot, right? She can rescue. That's the main point. Just that alone is already a very fantastic piece of utility. Like when I see people enter Chapter 7 or Chapter 8 and they don't have Sue deployed, I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, this is such an obviously good and useful unit, Because I do know that in particular, like people really complain about like chapter 8, for example, about how they have to wind around this whole entire hallway. It's like, if you have like more mounted units and you use the rescue command more, it's like really not that bad. If Sue picks up Rutger and then drops him, then she gets like half the credit for everything Rutger does, right?
Yeah. So still, she's extending his range.
Even then you might say, oh, well, I have all these other mounts. Okay, well, they can fight unhindered from the rescue. Maybe you just say that like her combat's the worst of the mounts. Okay, but the fact that she's the one who's doing the job of carrying the units means that your other mounted units can fight without having their speed and skill halved. Going into chapter 8, you really ought to be bringing as many of them as you can. It lets them use their entire speed stat and their entire skill stat to fight the enemies as you go forward. Very often people will struggle with the wyverns in chapter 7. Understandably, they're pretty tricky enemies. Chapter 7 in general is just a rough map, right? I mean, like, make no mistake, it's pretty hard.
So much things can go wrong there.
A lot of people enjoy bringing an archer because, bows do have good stats against the wyverns. And in this case, Sue just has, out of all your bow units, Sue has by far the best stats. It's way ahead of the other guy. I understand her competition is Wolt and Dorothy, right? Like, come on, it's not hard to be better than these guys. Like, she's got better move, she's got better bulk, she's got better speed, she's got better everything. Like, she's just the more useful unit here. Anyone who's like undeploying her for that map or chapter 8 is just criminally underrating her.
I could argue like later on, oh, there are stronger units, I'm not going to deploy her, whatever. But now you have a bunch of weaklings. Like, why would you not? If she's the best of the weaklings, why would you not put her out? But I'm going to stop arguing your point.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's good to reinforce. Part of why I enjoy the reinforcement, part of why I like kind of hyped you up and hyped your point up as well, is just so that like we're sure we're understanding each other. I will say, okay, Shin's just better than her in like most every way.
Shin is fantastic. Shin is something else, man. He is
good. He's seen his stats. It's like, golly, he's
bonkers. Good. What a unit, man. But anyway, it's not about. But he's rated high, so we'll keep him there.
Yeah, he's rated high, and part of it is he gets the privilege of hard mode bonuses, right? Yep. But like, even it's not as though you have to only use Shin or only use Sue. There's still cases where Sue is still going to want to be like rescuing and dropping people. With any EXP she's gotten from just killing trash mobs with her iron bow or whatever. I think it's pretty easy for her to start outclassing some other your mounted units like, Trucker Noah. I'm so unimpressed with Trucker Noah. She has the privilege of using, the bows, which in FE6, the bows are very aggressively statted for each of their weapon tiers. And so it's pretty easy for her to just, chance out kills. So to kind of retread my points, I think that the reason she's underrated is because people are too afraid of going Sakai because they fail to recognize that she's just better. She's just more useful than other units on account of being a mount. Anyone who's undeploying her on account of any of those qualities is just massively underrating her or massively overfearing Sakai.
Okay, I like those points. I think there's a lot of things there to take. Listen, if anything out of this experience right now, we definitely proved to the viewer that those two units are underrated. Like, there's no who is more is going to be the debate, but they definitely do have their strong points as to which one it is. So I will be doing my vengeance proc over here, and I'm gonna hit you back about the fact that you said people are afraid of Sakai. I don't think anybody really goes that far. So, like, I'm not gonna even touch Sue because of Sakai. It's more of like, why would I go Sakai? I think the biggest problem with Sakai is that they cover too much ground, so they can snipe your weaklings if you don't plug the chokes correctly. And that's what really makes people frustrated. The worst one is actually the Fog of War chapter with the two boltings and the ballista. That's really where it hurts. If you're going to argue like Sakai is really hard, that's probably the chapter I'd say hurts the most, because there's also a timer on it, so you can't just sit and wait. You have to actually push up. I will say the horse, I can't argue that. You're going to win a point there. Horse utility is absolutely fantastic. The fact that you brought up the whole rescue mechanic perspective, and the fact that her weight is so low that she can actually rescue the majority of units in the game is very good. I think that you're overrating when you say, oh, rescue is fantastic and the utility is great from rescuing and all this and that. You have to use an action to rescue someone. Then you have to use somebody else's action to either take and drop on the same turn so that somebody else can perform an action on the next one. So like you're really just gaining space, but this does not a lot for you on enemy phase unless you're setting up a position to defend, right? Like, so you want to drop someone at a certain spot, you can rescue, then take, drop in that position, and you're good to go. That I'll give to you. But if it's on player phase, you're going to rescue and then what? Move up and then waste somebody else's turn to take that unit, or she's going to have to drop the next turn. So now she's effectively used 2 of her turns to rescue and then drop. So she's not contributing for 2 turns. Her only contribution is to bring somebody else to a certain point. Like, if that's the logic, then we might as well deploy the weakest cav that can do combat better. No matter how you spin this, like up until the point that she promotes, she is still a 2-range only bow unit.
So you're not in love with the, I like to call it not the 1-2 range, but the 1-2 range, right? You're not in love with that. The ability to attack another 1 or 2.
I think that bow units do have value, obviously. Like they definitely do. But in a game like FE6 and FE7, the GBA games in general tend to value javelins and hand axes a lot more, just because they're dual phase, right? Like, you can do player phase and you can do enemy phase with it because you can just equip it. And they're so enemy phase centric. They're really heavy on enemy phase combat. Like, if you can't enemy phase with her, you might as well, you're just gonna walk. Whereas something like Cecilia, I can barrier, or I can rescue, or I can heal, or I can. Then a rescue is worth it, because if I'm just gonna walk, I might as well rescue.
You are not super impressed with the rescue. You say it's so many actions to do what, move a unit forward. I guess my only counter argument to that is you have to spend an action to pick up, and then you have to spend an action to drop, and then you have to spend an action to, do the combat that you're going to do in the new place. Like, it'd be one thing if Rutger could just move 7 squares on his own. Have to do those rescues in order to get Rutger to connect with the enemy, or in order to get, Roy past the reinforcements so you can seize the throne without having to deal with all of them. Or if you have to do that in order to get the, thief to the treasure room before the other ones do and really complicate matters, then do you have to do it, or do you get to do it, right? Is this something that actually makes your strategy better? Even though it costs a lot of actions, certainly it costs a lot of actions, I'm not going to argue with that. The fact is, if you can't do it without spending those actions, then the fact is, if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't have this result at all. Is that still not convincing you, or?
No, I could definitely, this could come down to playstyle, right? Like, it really, this could be a choice in which you're like, well, I prefer to have a bunch of rescue bots and have one unit that just does all the combat and, just go from there. That's a way to go about it. And it's not a bad way. It's actually a lot, this is Awakening playstyle 101. Right? That's basically what you do in Awakening. I think the argument I'm really trying to make is that if I'm going to have a unit just be a rescue bot, I would rather it be a 1 range, because at least it can do something on enemy phase. That's really the argument I'm going to make. If I'm going to bring a unit that the whole point of the unit is to be a player phase unit, and I'm going to spend her player phase by ferrying people, then I'm taking away, I might as well put any horse there. It could be an unequipped Clarine, and it would be the same thing. So I don't think it's in her favor. In that case, if I could one up with even Trek or Noah and grab someone, rescue, and then drop, he can still do something on enemy phase. I could drop a person to the right and position Noah in a way that somebody could come attack me, but I can't do that with Sue. So
looking at the final turn, you want the horse unit to be themselves capable of the enemy phase combat as well. You're dropping them really in the heat.
Yeah, if the argument is going to be rescue dropping, then I think that the horse unit has to be able to contribute. Of course, there's going to be dead time, right? We've all played Genealogy. Yeah. When it does happen, I think the unit should be capable of positioning themselves and not be afraid to be aggressive, not be afraid to take space.
Yeah, okay, this I can buy as a real downside of Sue, because there are a lot of times when, but I spoke before about my strat of just having Marcus just drop Roy on Klein's spawn point so that he always gets Klein no matter what, right? Yeah, you can't have Sue drop her, and obviously you can't have Sue do that. I have someone else do it. But it doesn't have to be Klein and his gang. It can really be any arbitrary group of enemies who can just walk up and kill the Sue now, which is a lot of them. Frankly, I do think there are a lot of places where, Sue's bulk is not really doing her any favors. I can totally buy that if you really break it down and you look at who's doing the rescuing, especially if you're bringing this many people who are rescuing, least effective one is now lowering in my esteem a bit. I can buy it.
If she gets tapped by 2 javelin wielders in succession, odds are she's going to probably die, because she only has 23 bulk combined at base. And this is not a problem that's unique to her, and her attack stat is really low. She has a 5 strength attack. The bows don't really have a lot of might imbued into them. They're good, but they're not the best, and she has a 30% strength growth, so her averages are not looking good. I will grant to you, though, that her speed is fantastic, and the Mula gear is also really good. So having access to Mula gear and having the speed, and also indirectly having high speed also increases her bulk. Every point of HP she has can be translated into a point of defense or resistance. But the truth is, she's not going to be doing enemy phase combat, and FE6 in general has a lot of enemy phase going on. So,
yeah, just gonna let them javelin or hand axe them all down, right? So.
Yeah, and she can't really do that because she's a liability on enemy phase. You brought up the bow thing, and I 100% agree. I think that having bows in this game is very, very good too, because of the fact that the biggest threats in the game later on are wyverns, so this is a point to her advantage. I don't think that Shin existing invalidates her, by the way, but I do think there are probably better combat units than her. Like, I would rather deploy maybe another zealot. There's another thing, you didn't touch upon this, but I definitely will say, she is gonna require a promotion item. And even upon promotion, her options don't get better for combat. Like, getting swords is not a good thing in this game after promoting. Like, she doesn't have a versatility beyond being a bow unit. We're not gonna see insane numbers with the sword pulled out.
So a question about the promotion I might have is, first off, you get an Orion's Bolt completely for free from a village, right? I guess you do have to get the village, right? You have to make sure it doesn't fall to bandits or whatever. But you do get one from the village. You also get a second one if you manage to save Klein and his whole entourage.
Correct.
So my question here is, how difficult do you think that is?
You actually kind of make me think about it now because I didn't even realize this, but that chapter in particular is actually pretty hard because rate at which those guys move is random. Like
it's a 20% to not move. It's so troll sometimes. It's like, bro, really?
Yes, it's the weirdest. You kind of set me up to basically say that because I was gonna let this slide, and I don't know how I forgot that, but it is really hard to get those guys to move consistently. Also, I was just gonna argue, man, 5K is pretty good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, 5K is it's still good money. You can argue, it's pretty good.
If you go to 11A and you're just like, I just want to sell this for a bunch of killer axes, okay, that's
doesn't
fair.
look too bad. Whatever. Like, sometimes 5K goes a long way, like a long way.
Okay, to be fair, wait, hold on, wait, stop, hold on, man. You can't even spend that money until like the end of chapter 13. Hold up.
But then but it's money that I know I'll have after chapter 13, which is otherwise I wouldn't, like, extra money doesn't hurt. Whenever it's still
you have the silver card.
But like money is still king. Like, I can get something that I want immediately or whenever it's accessible, but with money, as opposed to like I can promote Sue. And this is, I've used Sue many times. I actually really like Sue. That the fact is, if I have somebody to promote, it's gonna be Shin.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. Yeah, like if you got an Orion's Bolt and you promote Sue and not Shin. Actually, I did that in my past playthrough. Okay, my Sue was like several points above her strength and speed averages. I'm like, this is gonna be the run.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Sometimes you just get lucky.
I mean, I don't feel like I need that extra 5K that bad. I think I can find some other stuff to scramble out and sell. You get a bunch of gems in chapter 12. That should be fine. I guess if you urgently need killer axes in chapter 11A, then sure, but
I gotta say, your first point is on point. I don't think people should be afraid of Sakai. Also, I don't know how you didn't bring this up. Mula gear on her is like bonkers. She has fantastic speed. Mula gear, she can double anything. There's nothing that can survive her, basically.
Yeah, she just, whatever it is, she's gonna double it, right? Okay, maybe not, I was about to say maybe not Gel, but you don't even have Mula gear or Miragri by then. I think like the fastest enemies that remain by the time you get Miragri are like 22 speed.
Yeah, even then, and even if the Swordmasters had 30, she can what? She can still probably double them because she'll have enough speed. And it adds 5 speed.
There are none.
Yep. Also, she can definitely one round those mana keys at the end with that too. So and there's a lot of mana keys that pop up, especially towards the ending chapters. But
I think the reason I was hesitant to bring that up as a point is because I think anyone who gets to I think it's like 150 weapon EXP required to equip Miragri is already kind of sold on the idea of Sue. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was going to rather speak to the audience that like needs a reason to use her now, and I think a reason to use her now is she has base level 1, which earns EXP pretty quickly, or if she just gets totally rotten levels, then you just bench her, which I mean it's totally fine.
Like
that's how I play the game. If they get bad levels, you get benched. Like
growth unit 101 there.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like just. Someone who just isn't deploying her in 7, isn't deploying her in 8, and has level 1 Sue going into 9, and is like really upset at their level 1 Sue going into 9. I can actually understand that upsetness, but it's because you made a mistake earlier on, right? Like
I agree.
I think the analysis needs to be focused on the here and now in the short term. Yeah. What can this unit do now? And it's plenty. That's
7 and 8,
she can
do
plenty.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I do agree with that. Those are all points in her favor. There's pretty much very few, especially since like you don't have all the calves yet. So like there's not even a real reason to be like, I don't want to deploy this guy. Like, it's no. I definitely agree with that. Yeah,
we've each presented our unit. We've each presented our rebuttal. Like I don't know what happens now. Do we just like Do we leave it up to the viewers to decide? Do we like rock, paper, scissors over it? Or
I guess the best thing to do would be for people to leave down in the comment below who do they think is indeed the most underrated unit in Fire Emblem 6. Sue?
Is it Cecilia? Is it Sue?
Or is it somebody else? Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe somebody else is going to come in here and be like, I think Garrett is the most underrated unit in Fire Emblem 6. And you know what?
That'd be a real take. Holy smokes.
And
I don't even know how to answer that.
I guarantee you somebody's going to say Roy. Like, I know it. I know it already.
That was what I was gonna say. Like the thing is, I said Sue, and then you said Cecilia. You said another unit from another game, and that reminded me of Roy. I was like, darn.
Oh, we'll cover that one.
Roy.
Soon we'll get to that one.
Yeah, no.
I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please, please, please go and check Raisins out over on his Twitch channel. The link's gonna be in the description. I'm not lying. Like I truly respect him as a player. I think he's one of the best tacticians we've seen in a long, long time. And I'm not touting his horn just because he's here, because I actually do believe it. I used to watch him all the time on Twitch, and I still do.
It was lovely to be on the show. Seriously, thank you so much for inviting me. It was great to be here, and it's good to be present in front of your audience right now. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, you guys have a wonderful night.
That's right. Take care.